What's good, everyone? It's your boy Natsu with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And I got two very special guests on the live stream tonight. John, who you've seen before from Sports Talk Chicago, one of, if not the fastest growing sports YouTubers out there right now in Sports Talk Chicago, I might add. And my good friend Paul as well, who you guys have seen in previous live streams. And can you guys first introduce yourselves to the people out there who might not already know who you are before we get into all the free agency talk? And we already got the first comment coming in. You guys see what it is. Go ahead, Paul.
So hi, everyone. I think I've been on the podcast a few times before, but just an avid sports fan from Chicago. Most of my takes are gut feelings. So hopefully got some good ones for you tonight.
Hi, everyone. My name's John, Sports Talk Chicago. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just past 8,000 subscribers and still counting. And all of us are college roommates. These talks that you're going to hear tonight were replicated before the coronavirus, like 2 or 3 years ago, when we all actually roomed together in college in the Boyer House at University of Chicago. So this is going to be really fun tonight. We are giving you a sneak peek behind the curtain, if you will, tonight in this live stream. I'm pretty excited.
Reality TV.
We talked about this before we got on, but again, like the first comment, the GOAT needs his respect. Just hold it, Abdullah. We'll get to that conversation towards the end of the stream, and I know you're very much gonna be looking forward to what Paul and John have to say. But first and foremost, we talked about this a little bit via direct message a couple of weeks ago, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on the Carson Wentz to Washington move, your thoughts on whether Washington or Indianapolis won that trade, and how you feel about Indianapolis's corresponding move to trade for Matt Ryan as well. Whoever wants to start.
John, you go first, because I have some crazy opinions on this.
Okay, let's start with the obvious here. This was an outstanding move for the Washington Commanders, no matter what anybody says. Here's the thing. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I will take 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions and 3,600 passing yards all day long from Carson Wentz. And that's just a fact. And, unfortunately, Washington Commanders fans, much like Chicago Bears fans, decide to settle for mediocrity at times at the quarterback position. And this is not mediocre. I'll take a 94, 95 passer rating. I'll take taking care of the football compared to Taylor Heineke, who had 10 picks last year, although he did okay. But still, regardless, there's less interception potential, maybe more fumble potential, but less interception potential. On top of it, Carson Wentz, for the most part, is a winning-ish quarterback. I'll take 9-8 last year, despite what happened at the end of the season. This is certainly an upgrade no matter what. We can all agree on that, despite, maybe this isn't the guy you wanted. The fact is, I'll take Carson Wentz over Taylor Heineke any day of the week. He can throw the ball a little bit better. He is more accurate. He turns the ball over less. And all those things, to me, signal that this is a good trade overall for the Commanders. So you got to get used to saying Commanders. But
yeah, don't we all, John?
At the same time, I think the Colts also fleeced everybody in this entire move to get Matt Ryan. They really didn't give up too much to get. I mean, now you got a perennial MVP quarterback, and I'm not saying Matt Ryan's a great quarterback by any stretch, but he's definitely 10th, maybe 9th or 10th, maybe 11th in the NFL, and that's not bad for a team that's had a carousel quarterback since Andrew Luck retired out of the blue. So this, I think, is going to be a very good situation for the Colts come next year. Their team is built for it. Now you got Jonathan Taylor, who is 23, just had 1,800 rushing yards last year. You bring in Matt Ryan, who's won an MVP, who led a team to a Super Bowl and almost won it. They're going to be a really good team next year, the Colts. And I also think the Commanders will improve with Carson Wentz at the helm. But, again, I understand there's some biases. And obviously, Commanders fans are also familiar with him from his time with the Eagles. So he's not a stranger by any stretch. But I think he's not a bad quarterback. He's certainly serviceable. And the numbers certainly point to it, too.
Yeah, I will say he was very frustrating to play against when he was playing for the Eagles. We could never get him down on the field. But go ahead, Paul. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to agree that the Colts definitely fleeced everybody because they traded for a quarterback who fits their timeline. Because Matt Ryan's not going to be around in 5 years. Carson Wentz might be, right? And maybe you could argue Carson Wentz has a higher ceiling given what he's shown previously. However, people forget that the Colts were Carson Wentz away from being in the playoffs last year. If that makes sense. They were Matt Ryan versus Carson Wentz away from being in the playoffs. And they're a good team. They could be a dangerous team in the playoffs, the way they play defense and run the ball. So it's hard for me to say that I like the move, given Carson Wentz's final game as a Colt being such a disappointment. Now, what I want to ask everyone in the live stream, as well as you two guys, knowing what you know now, that Baker Mayfield, once out of the Browns, I think he would have been a much, much, much better option for the Commanders. And I don't think it's just a football move. I think, although I do think Baker Mayfield is probably more of an asset than Carson Wentz at this point, I also think you change the name, or you pick a name for the team more appropriately, and now you could have had the chance to bring in this guy, Baker Mayfield, who is a culture guy. Granted, he's being a little bit of a crybaby with the whole situation right now, but he's a guy that could
Carson
really bring
Wentz has
culture
been a
for the
crybaby,
team.
though.
That's also true. That's also true.
Yeah.
But Baker Mayfield, I feel like, is one of the only quarterbacks who you could actually get that's not locked down with the team that could really, really, really rally the troops. So I think that's kind of a huge missed opportunity. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on Baker Mayfield and the Commanders, if that would work.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I would have to see what we would have to give up for a Baker Mayfield, right? Would we have to give up the same sort of draft compensation that we gave up for Carson Wentz, a third-round pick this year, a likely second-round pick next year? I'm not so sure. But then again, Baker Mayfield's only, 26 years old? He's younger.
Yeah, are you saying you'd have to give up less than that for Baker or more?
No, I would probably have to give up less. I'd probably have to give up less for Baker. Maybe slightly less, maybe a third and another third, or maybe a third and a player, something like that. But
and given Cleveland's situation, like they could ship him out for nothing. I mean, they don't need him. They signed Jacoby Brissett too for this year. I mean,
yeah, I think they mishandled that whole situation, but I don't know. I think they're roughly the same type of player, although I would say, maybe John disagrees with me on this, but I think Mayfield he still has more potential than Wentz. I think Wentz's potential was the 2017 season, but I don't think we'll ever see that again with his injuries dating back till that point.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that. Just because Baker's younger, and he's entering his 5th year, he has something to prove at this point, and he did well with Kevin Stefanski's first year there. I mean, that was 28 touchdowns, 8 picks, or 28 touchdowns, something along those lines. That's outstanding numbers, and those are actually pretty much Carson Wentz numbers. So it's about similar. Wentz had the better overall year in 2017, but I agree in the sense that we'll probably never see him get back to that point, not only just because of the injuries, but because of the mental toll that these past couple of years have taken on him. He just looks so scared. He looks scared to make a mistake the way he plays football. That's the one knock I would have on Carson Wentz. Baker Mayfield, to his credit, is still he's willing to put his body in the line. He's willing to take risks. And we saw that last year. He played a lot of the time while hurt, and that ended up hurting his free agency stock and his trade value, which is unfortunate. But he played hurt last year. He during his best year, he was throwing the ball downfield a lot, and he completed. He had Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham. It was a nice situation, and he had a good run game. And Washington has a good run game, and Antonio Gibson, I think it could have worked. I'm not sure who would have been better because they're pretty similar. But with knowing that Baker's younger, I wouldn't have minded that sort of trade or that sort of move either, knowing that he's younger. He has more potential.
Yeah, I will just say, though, on your Antonio Gibson point, I mean, yes, we have a good run game. If you just look at the stats, Antonio Gibson had over 1,000 yards. I believe he was the 6th leading rusher in the NFC, or it might have been the entire NFL. But yeah, he had pretty good stats. But you can't forget that he also fumbled the ball a ton on our side of the field, right? Which ultimately resulted in more points for the opposing team. So if he gets that, fixed this season, we'll see. Some running backs get the fumbling issue fixed. Some don't, like a Matt Jones that we had here out of the 3rd round as well a couple years back. We'll see. But I do believe that we have a good rushing attack. We have some good receivers, especially with Terry McLaurin being that alpha guy, and a talented defense. We'll see if they put that talent on the field this year. But I think overall, in terms of the Carson Wentz situation, and to just close this topic up, I'm still lukewarm, just like I was after the initial move. And, it hasn't really changed. My position really hasn't changed. I think he gave you the nice stats last year, 27 touchdowns, 7 picks, but I can't forget what he had the last 2 games of the season against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, you win one of those 2 games, you make the playoffs. He really wet the bed in both of those matchups. And it's kind of hard to forget that. And also kind of hard to forget that after everything that went on in Philly, they went to Frank Reich, back to Frank Reich in Indy. And after 1 season, they got rid of him. It's hard to just, lock that away. But moving on from the Carson Wentz move, I want to get to a player that Bears fans never wanted to let go, and Washington fans have wanted to or clamored for the last 2 off seasons now, and that is Allen Robinson. What is your thoughts on Robinson signing with the Rams on a 3-year, $46.5 million contract, and your thoughts on the Bears not retaining him as well? And we'll start with John on this one.
Okay, so I have some inside information to pass along. I've actually been in contact with Robinson's agent for the majority of the time throughout this season and during free agency. And what he told me is basically the following. Robinson wanted to be appreciated, and he felt slighted by the fan base at the end of this season. A lot of Bears fans wanted him out of town pretty much, and there was a lot of comments on social media about this, basically saying he's not blocking, he's not trying, when we already knew that Matt Nagy sabotaged him. And this was actually reported by Robinson himself, which I actually believe. I mean, you look at the targets from 150 to what, 66 this past season. It doesn't add up. And it doesn't even add up considering that last year there was a quarterback controversy. There were 2 different quarterbacks, still got 100-plus targets. This year, only 66. So when I heard that from Robinson's agent, and then I see what Robinson's been going through now behind the scenes with Matt Nagy, the former Bears head coach, it makes sense to me that he wanted to go. It makes sense to me, though, unfortunately, that Bears fans wanted him to go, too. They did not realize, nor do they care about the fact that Robinson was sabotaged. They just look at one play and they say, oh, he can't block. He's not showing effort on this one play. Well, look at the situation he was in. I don't blame the guy for not wanting to show 100% effort when he already knew he was being sabotaged. Look at Justin Fields. I mean, I had a guest on the other day. He said, oh, Justin Fields sits on the sidelines and never looks at the iPad. Yeah, because Justin Fields knew Matt Nagy was a fraud from the beginning. Why even sit there and waste your time studying and trying to learn this playbook when at the end of the day, he's going to be gone anyway? And he is. And now Justin Fields gets a new offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy. So as far as Allen Robinson goes, good for him. He gets to go to a contender, probably could win a ring before his career is over. And that's what I was cared about the most when I made my videos about it, because, this guy has wasted his career in Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, and now here in Chicago with Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Chase Daniel, Mitch Trubisky,
and Mitch Libiski.
Justin Fields. This is ridiculous. He needs to go somewhere where he's going to be appreciated, number 1, certainly in LA. Number 2, he has a chance to win a ring. And number 3, he could experience a career renaissance. I firmly believe it. And then when I heard that from his agent on top of it, I knew it was over. He was not going to come back. And I don't blame them for feeling that way. And, other people might come after him and say, oh, you didn't try, or bad way to leave Chicago. It's the other way around. It's called the Bears didn't live up to their promise when they signed him last year. And then the fans followed suit and for some reason blamed him, even though Matt Nagy was the one who got fired.
Yeah, there's something about those Ohio State quarterbacks being on our teams and not putting their head in the playbooks. But go ahead, Paul.
So there's something interesting what you said, which is that Allen Robinson wants to be appreciated. And I agree that he was not treated right at all in Chicago by the coaching staff and also by a portion of the fan base. But it is strange to me that he chose the Rams of all teams to be appreciated. These same Rams who weren't selling tickets to the Niners because they knew that their stadium would be full of Niners fans in a playoff game. The same fan base that, in my opinion, sort of criminally underrates Cooper Kupp for, being the best wide receiver last year, and totally, just neglected Robert Woods, who's now injured and now traded. So I really hope he is appreciated, and I hope he at least gets the ring that he deserves for how well he's played on complete garbage teams. But I'm not sure if he'll be as appreciated in LA as he was in Chicago.
Okay. I forgot to actually put this guy on our notes document, guys, but I would be remiss if I did not, open up a part of this live stream to discuss Mitch Libiski and his move to the Pittsburgh Steelers. What are you guys' thoughts on that move and John, he's gonna be the savior, right, for the Steelers, man.
He is going to be something else. You guys wait and see. No. Here's the truth about Mitch Trubisky. We all know, again, and these reports came out actually at the end of this season when Matt Nagy got fired. He was actually sabotaged, and it was proven. These were reports from The Athletic that talked about how Matt Nagy blew him off after the 2020 season. The whole quarterback change in week 3 of the 2020 season, that was also premeditated. So we knew that he was being sabotaged. And obviously the NFL agreed because he had a number of offers, went to the Steelers, and is probably going to be their apparent starting quarterback come week 1. Even if they draft somebody, Adam Schefter even said the same thing. He's going to be the apparent starter. As far as Mitch Trubisky himself, I feel like he's always been mistreated. And he was mistreated here in Chicago. He didn't really have enough weapons offensively. Bad offensive line like Justin Fields. The same offensive line that Justin Fields had, Mitch Trubisky had for 3 years here in Chicago. And it obviously didn't work. I think, this new situation, you've got a good run game, Najee Harris. You've got some good wide receiving weapons, good defense. Mike Tomlin's your head coach. I guarantee you Mike Tomlin ain't going to come in and try and sabotage Mitch Trubisky. He has many other things to worry about than doing that because he's not a childish idiot like Matt Nagy. He actually knows how to coach football, and he's a successful coach, one of the most respected coaches in the game, and also in my heart, a great coach. So I think Mitch Trubisky is going to have a good renaissance. I think this could be potentially an Alex Smith type situation. And I know Commanders fans are going to shriek when they hear that, but what I mean is when Alex Smith was run out of the 49ers by Jim Harbaugh and Colin Kaepernick, he really turned his career around when he went to the Chiefs. And I mean, he had a 4,000-yard season, and that was actually, believe it or not, under Andy Reid and to an extent, Matt Nagy. Alex Smith did very well with the Chiefs after he left San Francisco, after he was forced out. They called Alex Smith a bust after 1 year, even 2 years in San Francisco. I don't know how he stayed around. I mean, Alex Smith, they took him out for Troy Smith, then for Colin Kaepernick. Troy Smith is an automatic bust. We all know that today. And then he turned his career around. I feel like the same could happen for Mitch Trubisky. It all starts there in Pittsburgh. I'm very happy with the signing itself for both parties. Number one, if it works, Mitch is getting $27 million over 2 years. Then he could turn around in 2 years and actually hit the real free agent market and demand big money if he does well. Conversely, if he doesn't do well, those numbers go down to $14 million. And okay, the Steelers lose a little bit of money. They're going to draft somebody anyway. They have somebody ready in a year or two to take over for Mitch if it doesn't work. So I think either way, it's a beneficial signing. It gives Mitch a chance to prove himself and vindicate himself. And most importantly, it proves, at least to me, and it proves to other people in the NFL who trust Mitch Trubisky, he is worthy enough of getting a second chance, and he's worthy enough and good enough to at least start for an NFL team. That's a fact.
Paul?
John, I think you'll agree with me. If the Steelers always have the clock set to 2 minutes, Mitch Trubisky will be in the Pro Bowl. I swear. When he was on the Bears, last 2 minutes of the game, it's like, why were we not running the offense like this the entire game? So I actually think the Steelers is kind of a perfect situation because he could just hand the ball off for the majority of the time. And then if need be, he runs these 2-minute drills where he turns into Aaron Rodgers. And I don't understand. But I think the Steelers are probably the best fit for him right now. But I don't have as much faith in him as John does. I still think he's, likely just a transitional piece as they try to draft a quarterback and, of the future and actually build something not around Mitch Trubisky.
Maybe a Malik Willis from Liberty, right here. Well, back home, I guess, in Virginia. But, yeah, I mean, never been high on Mitch Libiski. There's a reason why I call him Libiski, not Trubisky. I think he was a major reason for a lot of the problems in Chicago. Obviously, Matt Nagy had a lot to do with it. Ryan Pace as well. But you can't just think that Trubisky had no role in all that. And there's a reason why he went straight into being a backup for Josh Allen. And I do agree with Paul and even John on this. I think it is a perfect situation for him in Pittsburgh, but people were saying the same thing about Carson Wentz in Indianapolis last year with a great defense, great rushing attack. Offensive line was even better in Indianapolis than it is in Pittsburgh. So I don't know. We shall see. Maybe John might be right. And I might have to go on this live stream and talk about how John was right, how Paul was right, and I was wrong. But
just listen. If the double doink, actually doinks in, I still think we're having a completely different conversation. Because then it's Mitch leads them to a playoff win, clutch, and then, maybe the organization believes in him. Maybe that's all he needs to succeed. But I think it's just been all downhill from there. So
we can we can play the what if game in a lot of scenarios, right? In the NFL.
Well, now he's got a coach that might be confident in him, so who knows?
And I'll say this too. Carson Wentz, to me, was not a failure last year. So I want to make sure that if Mitch Libiski turns around, turns around and has 28 touchdowns and 7 picks with the Steelers this year, that ain't a failure. I don't care what they do. If he puts up those numbers, those would be career highs. So by default, he would not be a failure. And the same for Wentz. He was not a failure. Maybe they didn't make the playoffs. Maybe the last 2 games they collapsed, which is fair to say. But when you actually look at the numbers themselves, Carson Wentz was not a failure by any stretch. And if Trubisky matches, that is not even close to being a failure.
Well, okay, you have to take into account that Carson Wentz is handing off the ball the entire season.
So what?
And if you watch the games, he's not the one putting in the work for the offense, right? Which is fine. But then in the critical situation, if you're, just a team manager out there at quarterback, you can't mess up. You're there not to make mistakes if you're going to hand the ball off. So if you make critical mistakes and lose your team a spot in the playoffs, then I still think that's a total failure.
From the Colts perspective, yeah, I mean, I agree with Paul. How can you say it's not a failure that, you traded away practically a first round pick, a couple picks for Carson Wentz, who you believed in, you believed strong enough in to trade those picks for, and then after one season, you trade him away to another team. How can you not say that is a failure? You started off or you ended off 9-6, and then you lost 2 straight games. Again, you win one of those games, you're in the playoffs, and you lose against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the worst team in the league. And I get it. Josh Allen also lost to the Jaguars while playing for the Buffalo Bills. That was much earlier in the season. That wasn't with playoff implications on the line. And Carson Wentz did that, and the Colts traded him away. So I don't know. John, do you have any pushback on that Carson Wentz was not, in fact, a failure?
All I'm going to say is this, statistically, at least. Statistically, okay, let's hold on. Statistically, he was not. These were some of the best numbers of his career. I'm just saying. Statistically, they were. 28 touchdowns, 8 picks is a great season in my book. Whatever it was. I think it was a 97 passer rating. That's fine by me. And I understand, okay, the last couple of games, the wheels fell off, and that's unfortunate for Wentz, for the Colts, for everybody involved. But I'm not going to define 2 games out of 17 or 16 and then say, oh, this whole thing was a failure. I think it started off great, and it obviously ended a little bit poorly, and he was traded. But then again, here's what I'll say too. Hey, if I knew I was in line to get a premier quarterback instead of Carson Wentz, I'd trade him right away. They already knew when they were going to trade Carson Wentz, hey, some guys are going to be on the market here. Potentially Matt Ryan, potentially Deshaun Watson, even with the civil suits, potentially Jimmy Garoppolo, which, whatever. But the point is, there were a lot of people on the market who they could have gotten, who they thought may have been better. I'd take Matt Ryan all day over Carson Wentz, and I'd take Deshaun Watson over Carson Wentz all day too. So that's why, if they had the inclination that they could get somebody better, I understand the trade. Look, if they knew they weren't going to get anybody better, they wouldn't have traded him. I mean, that's just plain and simple. Obviously, they thought that somebody better was going to be on the market because Carson Wentz at his best is probably 14th or 15th best quarterback in the NFL, and that's fine. And he did what he had to do.
Is Matt Ryan that much better than him? Like, I don't get.
What are you talking about? Matt Ryan puts up more yards every year.
He had 20 touchdowns and 12 picks last year. You're talking about stats, right? Is that since we're talking about stats? He put up 20 touchdowns and 12
yards. Okay. Matt Ryan, at least to his credit, he's not a game manager. Not like Carson Wentz. If you need him to throw the ball 50 yards, he'll do it. And he puts up 4,000. The MVP here at 4,900 yards.
Weren't the Falcons 7-10 last year? 7-10, 8-9, something like that.
Look at that team, man. It's still one of the worst defenses in the NFL. That's why Dan Quinn got fired.
Okay, that's fair. Paul?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think Matt Ryan is a huge upgrade, in part because of what we just said, which is Carson Wentz is a game manager who failed to manage the game in the most critical time of the season. So now you're going to trade for someone who fits your timeline, like Matt Ryan, who you can actually make a shot at the Super Bowl with. Like, if you say that with Carson Wentz you're making a shot at the Super Bowl, you just get laughed at.
Yeah. See,
although, hey,
if he gets hurt and the backup comes in, maybe Super Bowl.
Hey, hold on a second. That year, though, that MVP year that he almost won the MVP, I mean, I think even without Nick Foles, they would have made a run. I don't know if they would have made it to the Super Bowl, but they would have made a run in the playoffs even with Wentz. They would have won a game at least. I don't know about how many, but they would have won one, I think. whatever.
But two things on Paul's point. One, the whole Super Bowl narrative. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember very well, and this is a large reason why Hard Knocks did the in-season thing with the Indianapolis Colts last year. There was a certain buzz around that team, right? A lot of people talked about in the media of how they have a Super Bowl contending roster. Carson Wentz was supposed to be the answer on that roster. And this is the thing that worries me as a Commanders fan. He's coming to, in my opinion, a much inferior roster. I get it. Everybody wants to talk about the talent on our defense. Everybody wants to talk about Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin. But I think the only thing that we have over the Colts is Terry McLaurin over Michael Pittman Jr. Our defense was talented, but if you look at all the categories last year, we were bottom 5, bottom 10 in a lot of them last year. We gave up a ton of yards. I know we got better towards the end of the season. The fans in the chat who want to talk about how, we have a Montez Sweat, we have a Jamin Davis, we have all these guys. Trust me, I believe in them. All I'm saying is he's coming to a worse roster, and we expect him to produce better results than he produced last year on a 9-8 Indianapolis Colts team. I don't know about that. Second thing, if we want to talk about stats, Kirk Cousins put up 33 touchdowns, 7 picks last season, 4,200 yards passing. Someone who we know, obviously, in the Commanders community, but you guys know as well as Bears fans, right? Vikings are the Bears' rivals. And I would consider last season a failure for him. He had an 8-9 season. He's been pretty much 8-9, 7-9, 7-10, that sort of type of quarterback throughout his career. I mean, I think he's a failure of a quarterback, but he's not putting up wins, right? And I think you could say the same thing about Wentz last year, John.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I don't think Kirk Cousins is a failure, and I don't care if that's even unpopular. You know what? The numbers totally disprove it.
They're fluky. They're fluky.
Man. Come on.
They're fluky, bro.
Okay, even if they're fluky, hey, Bears fans would kill for a quarterback to have 100 passer rating in a Bears uniform.
And they'll be 8-9 next season.
No matter what the results were. They would kill for if Justin Fields had those same numbers and the Bears went 8-9, everybody would praise him and say it's somebody else's fault. So what are we talking about here? Hold on a second.
No, John, listen. You can draft Justin Jefferson to your fantasy team, and you could win your league, or you could compete for a Super Bowl. Those are the two options we have right now. I mean, after a certain point, it's empty stats. I think you have more of an argument with Carson Wentz because he's only there for 1 year, and to an extent, they performed well, even though they blew it, right? If you forget the fact that they blew it, they had a better record, right, than the Vikings. So in that sense, Carson Wentz, you can argue away the stats a little bit better. But Kirk Cousins, I can't get on board with that.
Here's what I'll say. To everybody watching. At the end of the day, all these debates about these inferior quarterbacks, because in general they are inferior compared to the, Deshaun Watsons or the Patrick Mahomes or the Aaron Rodgers of the NFL. At the end of the day, it's fun to talk about these people, but unfortunately the harsh reality is none of these guys are going to win a Super Bowl. They might put up great numbers, and that's why I like to debate about these specific players, especially because it's fun to see these numbers put up and maybe not the results be there, and it's fun to wonder why that's happening. But I will say that no matter what, you need to have a top 5 quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Unfortunately, if you have Kirk Cousins, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. Even if you have Carson Wentz, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. They might put up good numbers and pad their stats a bit. And, it's going to cause debate like what we're doing right now. But at the end of the day, at least I've realized personally, especially over this past year, really covering the NFL, you don't have a top 5 quarterback, it won't even matter. Look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers. They weren't the best. He still won the MVP. I mean, it just goes to show you that it depends on who the quarterback is and what their lineage is, what team they have. There are a number of different factors. Carson Wentz and Kirk Cousins, I like because I feel like they've been a little bit shafted considering their numbers. Like, okay, they get hatred because they don't win Super Bowls, but their numbers are good.
They don't even get into the playoffs, John. It's not about Super Bowls. They don't even get into the playoffs. That's the bare minimum for a guy, guys. But John, we didn't even talk about this point. They're also getting paid way more than the type of wins they're producing on the field. I don't even think we've gotten into that point in this conversation. Kirk Cousins getting paid $30+ million. He's getting paid one contract after another. I mean, his agent, man, has to go to the Agent Hall of Fame or something. I don't know. He needs to get a big bonus. But and then Carson Wentz, $28 million. We're on the hook for that this year. I mean, like at some point we got to talk about how their cap hit is way higher than what they're worth in terms of wins on the field. And that is the most important stat
But that starts with the highest up quarterbacks, though. I don't think that's the fault of the mediocre quarterbacks. I think it's because you have to pay someone like Patrick Mahomes such a massive contract that it just raises the bar for everybody. So I don't think that's the fault of these mid-level quarterbacks for cashing in. I think that's the big names.
And half the time, you have to remember this: it's a gamble. Look, there are 5 quarterbacks who you could say right now, yeah, they're going to be in the Super Bowl no matter what, or they've been in the Super Bowl, or they won a Super Bowl. There are only 5. There are 32 NFL teams, right? So at the end of the day, you're going to have to hope that your guy, if you don't have a top 5 guy, that you're going to roll the dice and that he'll work out. And if he does, it's going to be claimed a big success. And if it doesn't, well, you're going to look like a goat and not the good kind. So you just have to think about that too. Like, there are only so many Super Bowl caliber quarterbacks to go around. At the end of the day, what the Commanders did, what the Colts did, what the Steelers did, all these different quarterbacks, all of them have their merits and they have their drawbacks as well. And all of them are not top 5-esque, no matter what. So all these teams are taking a risk. They're taking a gamble, and they're hoping that maybe this is the year, or maybe they could just perform well enough as a game manager, and their defense will lift them into the playoffs or into the Super Bowl. That's what we have to remember no matter what. Like, I think I'm not saying I'm not going to sit here and cry grief for quarterbacks. At the end of the day, they're making $40 million, and that's fine. And the most protected position in football too. But I think sometimes we hold the rest of the 25, up against the top 5. And sometimes it's just not feasible, because at the end of the day, you only have 5 or 6 guys. You could say today, okay, they're going to be in the Super Bowl or they've won one. Everybody else is just taking a risk and trying to roll the dice.
Okay. Fair point. What are your guys' thoughts on the Bears' lack of activity this offseason? I believe the Byron Pringle signing and Eddie Goldman and Tariq Cohen releases were probably the biggest moves by the team. But, I mean, do you think they've really set Justin Fields up for success in the future? And will the front office that is in place right now finally lead the Bears to their old winning ways, I guess?
Now, I actually think that by tearing apart some of this old team actually does set up Justin Fields better for the future, because he needs at least 1 or 2 years with no expectations. I think last year the expectations were way too high for Justin Fields right off the bat. Everyone wanted him to start, and then it was a little bit of a disappointment. But he needs time to make some mistakes this year and not have all the pressure of the city to actually grow as a quarterback and then build the team around him. I don't think it was ever going to work where you draft a quarterback and then you're sort of immediately contending.
I agree with that assessment too. I said from the very beginning he shouldn't have started till like week 8, and you got a lot of pushback for that. But the fact is, he comes in and he gets sacked 9 times. So who's crazy now? Like, that was ridiculous. Should not have come in that early. If we're up to me, I wouldn't have even played him all year, to be honest, really, because that team was not built for success. He had nothing. He literally had nothing to his name besides maybe Darnell Mooney and David Montgomery when he was healthy. This year, the same. I'm very disappointed, I'll be honest, in the fact that the Bears have not targeted wide receivers enough. And my hope is that they do so in the draft. But right now, they do not have a lot of offensive weapons still. And, maybe Justin Fields is going to develop another year. And I know they're going to clear up cap space. Maybe in, 2023, they're going to sign wide receivers. And that's fine. I'm not mad about that. But I would have liked to see a little bit more movement. I mean, look, Tyreek Hill was about to be traded for a non-first round pick deal to the Jets, and that was about to happen. Why weren't the Bears in on that? I would trade all that for Tyreek Hill if it's a non-first round pick. You have to think about just stuff like that when it comes to supplying Justin Fields with weapons. That said, Ryan Poles has made some shrewd moves for sure. He's cut a lot of big salaries, including Khalil Mack. I wish they would have gotten the first rounder back for him, but I understand why they took him off the books after this season, and that's good. So he's made some shrewd moves for sure, but he better nail this draft with wide receiving help mainly, because Justin Fields, besides Darnell Mooney, really does not have much. Pringle, okay, we could talk about Pringle. The fact is, he had 600 receiving yards in essence with Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback. I want to see what those numbers are with Justin Fields this year in a developing offense, number one. Number two, they got St. Brown from the Packers, career high 98 receiving yards in a season last year. I don't care. I don't give a damn what that means nothing. He's a WR5 at best. These are not signings that are going to help out Justin Fields offensively. So my hope is that they draft somebody big in the draft, with their second round pick. They have 2 second round picks. Draft somebody significant in the draft when it comes to wide receiver, and wait and see what the market says in June or July. Maybe you can make another signing, or wait till next year. But, they need a veteran number 1 and even a veteran number 2 to an extent. to really help out Justin Fields. He needs somebody to throw to. He does. And I don't think he has enough right now to justify that.
John, quick question.
Hmm.
Do you think it's more important to get him another wide receiver now or to bolster the offensive line? Like, is it worth it to spend a second-round pick again on an offensive lineman? Or should we wait until we have a first-round pick to actually get a guy who could be there for a decade?
That's a good question. See, I want to say wide receiver because I really think it's important because the Bears, they just don't have good wide receivers. They never have had for years. Like, it's only one a decade. It's ridiculous. Like, okay, Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, then who else? Like, this is enough. They need good wide receivers. But at the end of the day, if you don't have time to throw the football, it won't matter who's running the routes. So, I mean, they do need offensive line help, and I know they've been investing a little bit. They got the center from the Packers, 2 years, $4 million. That was a great signing. I applauded it from Ryan Poles. I think offensive lineman is going to be more important, but in my heart, I just want some better wide receiving play from the Bears because what they have right now, I'm actually just very much disappointed with. Everything else that Ryan Poles has done, I've been happy with. But this wide receiving core is still atrocious. And the Bears were tied to a lot of different people. They were tied to Chuck. They were tied for a minute to Adams, which I knew was never going to happen. But still, now we sit here today and who they signed? Pringle and St. Brown. I mean, that's completely underwhelming for the wide receiver position.
I will say it's funny because I sent this tweet as a direct message earlier today about Cornelius Lucas signing a 2-year, $8-ish million contract. And obviously we have Charles Leno. It's just funny because those are two guys, Bears fans. I'm not saying you two in particular, but I heard a lot of chat on Twitter about Bears fans not wanting to re-sign them, saying they're washed, saying Washington got nothing out of them. We turned Charles Leno into a top 10 left tackle last season, back to where he was right in his heyday for the Bears. And Cornelius Lucas gave us pretty good starter left tackle play 2 seasons prior. So it's just funny how you guys are talking about the fact that you need O-line, good O-linemen back in Chicago. You guys need to build in the trenches, but you guys let 2 guys get away that might not have been good against or for the Bears, but were pretty good here in Washington.
So here's the thing about Charles Leno, and this is pretty interesting. The Bears, maybe it was 2019 or 2020. Matt Nagy fired the offensive line coach. He fired Harry Hiestand, who's a legend. Fired him. Now he's back at Notre Dame, and that's fine, but he fired him. And then, all of a sudden, Charles Leno's production dips, and he has a horrible season. I wonder why. And that was Matt Nagy's doing. Of course. Who else would it be? And Leno, even before, everybody could trash Leno, but you know what? Even in the years without Hiestand, he still played every snap. He never got hurt. He was always on the field, and there's value in that to me. Even if you're, a couple of guys get by you here and there, I'll take a guy who I know is going to play all 17 games. And then last year, he goes to the Commanders, and of course he does better because he's not in that situation anymore. Can you imagine what it must feel like mentally when you have a coach that you mesh with, that you do great with? He's fired for no reason to be a scapegoat for the actual coach who should be fired. Then, your production tails off, you leave, you go somewhere else, brand new environment. Of course you're going to do better. And that's the explanation, at least with Leno.
Yeah. I mean, we have a great O-line coach here in Matsko, who, even though he's getting up there in age, I mean, he just seems to get the best out of the offensive lineman that we bring in here in DC. So we'll see how that pans out next year, though, without Cher, who I don't know if you guys have heard among our fan base. Not too many people were high on him. I was one of the few that was and thought that, it would be great to bring him back. But obviously he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and we shall see if our offensive line holds up. I want to ask you guys, though, about the quarterback moves this offseason. Deshaun Watson to the Browns, 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed. He was actually represented by an Eritrean agent, David Mulugeta, who I'm very proud of. $80 million more in guarantees than any other NFL contract in history. Russell Wilson going to the Broncos. And what are your thoughts on how those moves panned out and also how stacked the AFC is right now compared to the NFC?
I thought, well, first of all, you're missing the biggest quarterback move, and that is Tom Brady's unretirement. Just putting that out there. But yeah. I think it's been sort of a goofy offseason for quarterback moves because I have a hard time finding a team that really has improved exponentially because Deshaun Watson is still a huge question mark. I mean, even the best case scenario, he's only going to be back in time for the playoffs this season, right? For whatever suspension he gets. Russell Wilson, I think, is the most interesting because he gets to play in Denver and throw the ball 1,000 yards. But I don't think that team is really built too much better than the Seahawks, other than obviously a big difference in defense. The defense is a big difference, but I don't think that team necessarily has what Russell Wilson needs to really compete for a championship. And you could argue with me about that, but especially when it comes to wide receiver weapons, I don't really see that move for Russell Wilson.
Here's the good thing about Russell Wilson, though. He really didn't have too much in Seattle. I mean, over the years, it was always one guy. It was Doug Baldwin, then he left. It was Tyler Lockett for a little bit, then he left, and then it was DK Metcalf. It's not like he had 5 or 6 receivers on retainer, even 4 or 3 on retainer. A lot of the guys he was throwing to, besides the one big one, were a bunch of no-names regardless. I love that move personally. I think that's going to be the best move when it comes to this entire offseason, because the Broncos for years have needed a quarterback. I mean, think about last year. You got Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. Now you upgrade to Russell Wilson. That's a hell of an upgrade. There's one team, Paul, that I will disagree. They got better. Like, that's exponential growth.
No, I agree. I do agree that the Broncos got a lot better. Although in that stacked division, I'm not sure how much better. I just don't understand the move from Wilson's perspective.
Chiefs got worse
because he agreed to that. He that was one of his choices, right?
Right. Well, it seemed like, at least based on past years and based on this year too, there was a bit of a rip with him and Pete Carroll, which makes sense because you're together for so long. Eventually, you're going to want to break it up. And the Seahawks were going in the wrong direction. I mean, year after year, when Russell needed help, especially offensively, what do they do for him? Really, I mean, a whole lot of nothing. They let a lot of guys go. I mean, that defense was decimated from what it was 5 or 6 years ago when they won the Super Bowl. They didn't spend any money offensively. I mean, they were pretty much asking for him to leave, and he left. I think the Broncos, that's probably the biggest move as far as exponential growth and as far as Super Bowl opportunities go. Tom Brady, I'm retiring, is not surprising to me. I really thought he was going to, and that's just going to be good for the Bucs again. And now looking at how weak the NFC is, he should have a pretty easy path. I mean, it's going to probably be Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and then, okay, who's going to win? And
the Rams. Don't forget about them. Don't forget about the Rams.
Tom Brady should have beat the Rams. They should have beat the Rams.
I don't think they're repeating, dude. I don't.
You got Allen Robinson now.
They remind me of the Cubs in 2016. I feel like they're going to totally tail off. Like, they're complacent. They won. Now their time is done.
How are they complacent? They essentially doubled down and got Allen Robinson in free agency, giving him a big contract. And
but they lost OBJ and they lost Robert Woods. And
okay, but OBJ had a season. OBJ had a season-ending injury, right? So, like, instead of running it back with OBJ potentially missing half the season, they doubled down once again and got an Allen Robinson who's going to be there the entire season, fingers crossed, and will provide the Rams another explosive offensive weapon outside of Cooper Kupp, right?
Well, we'll have to see. But I really think it's going to be Packers and Bucs in the NFC. And then what was the other quarterback move you mentioned? There was one more that I forgot about.
But it's Sean Watson to the Browns.
Yeah, that one. Oh, my goodness. For Watson, if he somehow is able to play, it's going to be a great move. They did a good job, too, in investing in insurance with Jacoby Brissett. I've always been high on Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a decent backup, one of the best backups in the NFL, and definitely starting caliber. So I think, the Browns are going to be better. If Deshaun Watson plays, he's 10 times better than Baker Mayfield. The only thing that actually worries me about Watson is, hey, he hasn't played in a year. I'm just saying. Now, I'm not saying it means he's going to suck or anything, but, like Colin Kaepernick, for example, like he came back today, he wouldn't be the same as he was in 2012 or 2013. I would hope that he was. I mean, he had 16 touchdowns, 4 picks. That was great. I don't know if he's going to do that again. The same with Watson. I would just hope that his production does not regress. If he can get like 28 touchdowns, 10 picks, and stay on that right track, I think he'd be fine. But I just hope that he could stay, good because, he did sit out a year. I mean, that's going to take a toll no matter who you are.
All right. You're about to get roommate Nazi right now. So I agree 1,000%, John, with your take about Russell Wilson to the Broncos. I think that makes them a lot better. And I disagree with Paul in that, the Broncos are approximately the same team as the Seahawks. I mean, the Broncos have a good receiving group. They have, Sutton, they have Jerry Jeudy, They have Tim Patrick, who is an up and coming guy, even though I know he's getting up there in age, but it seems like he's playing much better. I don't know about that. Offensive line isn't great, but it's average. The Seahawks have been fielding out an offensive line that's been trash for pretty much most of Russell Wilson's career. So I think that's an upgrade. The defense, Paul, you pretty much just said, besides the defense, it's the same situation. That's an elite defense, bro. Like, we can't just
I understand.
Like,
I thought Wilson's main problem was the line, though. I thought his main problem was he didn't have an offensive line. So now
there's an upgrade now.
So it's a slight upgrade, but then you've downgraded at wide receiver. That's why I think for him it's a bit of a lateral move. I think so. I mean, DK Metcalf is like,
he regressed last season, bro. Like, this isn't the 1,500-yard.
We got to remember, though, too, Wilson was hurt. He missed time.
Okay, but when he was back,
passes from Geno Smith versus Russell Wilson, there's a bit of a difference.
Yeah,
I agree. But when he was back, he still did not have a connection with DK Metcalf. So, and I know people can blame the finger, but that just goes towards John and I's point that Russell Wilson is going to be a huge upgrade for the Broncos this season. Because I think last season was just out of the norm, right? It was an aberration from what we've seen out of Russell Wilson in the past. The Deshaun Watson, the Browns move, man, I think you guys are sleeping on this move, guys. Like,
he may not even play though.
Listen, exactly. I'm fully considering that. Like, I literally said for most of the offseason, I am thinking that Deshaun Watson is going to get suspended for, most, if not all the year. So I literally thought that 2022 would be a wash.
Sure.
That doesn't matter. He's 26, 27 years old. He's going to be in the league, if healthy, for a good 10 years, in my opinion. And I think the Browns, obviously, you have to deal with the off the field stuff. I get it. It's you can't just push that aside. You hear about one case after the other. I get that. But it seems now where we're headed is that he's going to have to settle. He's going to pay a huge amount. And again, I think he's going to get suspended for 2022. But starting with 2023, right? Like, if you take out this season, he's probably going to be with the Browns for a lot more seasons after that. And the Browns have one of, if not the best offensive lines in the league. They have the best running back duo in the league. They have Amari Cooper, who they just brought in via trade. I think they're going to only improve at the wide receiver position, potentially through the draft, or maybe pick up a guy in the later stages of free agency. They have a super underrated defense with studs all over the field. They have Myles Garrett. They have a pretty good secondary as well. I mean, maybe add a linebacker, but the Browns are stacked. I could see them being Super Bowl contenders in 2023, even in that stacked AFC. I said this right after the Deshaun Watson trade. I get it. He's getting paid a huge sum of money. But at the same time, the Browns have a lot of pretty cheap guys on their roster that, could be there for the long haul and or at least up until the next contract. So I think the Deshaun Watson, the Browns move, I get the off the field stuff. I really do. But I was fully considering that throughout the entire offseason that he would not play for most, if not all, of 2022. I would still make that deal because I know I'm getting at least 10 years out of Deshaun Watson on my roster. If not 10, you're getting at least 5, right? And you can't really say the same about Russell Wilson, who we all love him, but he's 33. He's going to be 34, right? He's a minuscule quarterback, right? So maybe he might not last until the 40 age mark that Tom Brady's lasted to. So I don't know. I think a lot of people, maybe it's just the off the field stuff. Maybe that's why people are sleeping on the move, but I don't know, man. I think that football strictly, I think that's a great move by the Browns.
The only thing that scares me is, seriously, and I mean this, he might be sitting for 2 whole years.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know.
That you're not going to play football for 2 years, then all of a sudden try and ramp it back up and play NFL football, and then maintain the production that you had out in Houston. That's an entirely different situation. That's all. I'm just wondering how he's going to be able to stay fit and be ready after 2 years of no gameplay.
See, now I get what you mean. You mean 2 years, considering like he was out of all last year, right? So that would be 2. Right. So this goes back to your point about you don't know how he's going to play. Even if he plays this season, you don't know how he's going to be. You don't know if he's going to resume.
Exactly.
That top 3 level of play that we saw just 2 seasons prior. Bro, he's a quarterback. He's not a running back. He's not a receiver. I don't think he obviously has the athleticism, but he was a great elite passer, man. He led the league in passing yards. I think, sure, it might take him some games to get back to where he was before, but I think in no time he'll resume being that, I think, top 6, top 7 quarterback in this league, and I think we'll give the Browns a major upgrade at quarterback. You have any opinions on that, Paul?
You're right. Although I do worry that the league might, rightfully so, make an example out of him after coming down and saying that gambling on games that you're not playing and that you have no part of is worth 1 year. And then you get someone who has more cases than I can't even know, dozens of cases. I mean, I really think the league might make an example out of him. And if he's sitting for more than 2 years, you're right that he doesn't necessarily need to keep up the athleticism like a wide receiver or like a running back.
And
but
even if he does, he's only 26, 27. But
yeah, but it does take a lot. It does take a lot of mental effort at the quarterback position to like stay in a rhythm and keep in a groove of the offense. So maybe sitting with the team, I actually don't know how the suspension would work, if he's able to like work with the team or if he just can't play or if he can't even be at the practice facility. I'm not sure how that really works, what the system is for that, but he's going to need some time to like ramp up and learn the offense and, get used to playing football again with completely different guys. So I think if you're thinking really long-term, sure. But then you're going to have to start paying all these guys that now Deshaun Watson takes up the majority of your salary. All these guys you signed with Baker on his rookie deal. I'm not so sure.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair point. I can't look past the fact that you're probably going to get Deshaun Watson for at least 5-6 years for the Cleveland Browns. And I get that they traded away a lot of picks. They gave him a lot of money. But even if he's suspended for all of 2022, which, again, maybe some people didn't factor in, but I fully factored in, I think you're getting an elite quarterback on a Super Bowl contending roster, man. And, again, they could still add guys. They could still add guys at receiver. They have a pretty good tight end in Njoku who, might have been underutilized under Baker Mayfield, but may live up to what a lot of people thought he was coming out of college, coming out of Miami, if I'm not mistaken, with Deshaun Watson, right? Like, you got to consider guys that might improve with a upgraded quarterback in Watson at the helm. But I want to ask you guys, what do you guys think was the worst move in the NFL offseason?
Oh, boy. Paul, do you got one first?
It's hard. I think this might be recency bias, but the Tyreek Hill trade, I understand you couldn't get an extension for him. And he must have been threatening to like leave the team, or not play for this year if he didn't get the extension. Because if you're Patrick Mahomes, how do you not run it back with the roster with Tyreek Hill? It seems like a terrible trade for everyone involved, because I don't think the Dolphins seriously think they're contending. I don't think Tyreek Hill thinks that he's going to be seriously contending with like Tua Tagovailoa as quarterback. And now all of a sudden, Kansas City could potentially be the worst team in the division. And I'm not even making that up. They might be the worst team in the division. So I think in all respects, that's the goofiest move of the offseason.
Are you sure the Dolphins might not be contending? They upgraded the offensive line with one of the best left tackles in the league in Teron Armstead. I mean, they upgraded their defense as well.
Have to show me that he can throw it downfield to.
Tua is the main question. I mean, I agree with you on that.
Yeah. And do you really think that they're favored over like the Bills? I mean,
no, but that's because of my guy, John,
twice a year,
Josh Allen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Paul, I'll agree with you on that. Only because, a lot of these moves, I mean, there's at least been some benefit for both sides, even like the Matt Ryan trade. Although I will say this. The Falcons should have gotten a little bit more back, because right now they don't have any quarterback. They only got a third-round pick for Matt Ryan. That's bad for the Falcons. And I find it ironic, or I should say not ironic. Guess who works there now, Paul? Ryan Pace. Ryan Pace went back, and Phil Embry. They still work there down in Atlanta together. And then what do you know? So Ryan Pace gets there, unpacks his bags, gets into his hotel room. All right, how could I ruin this team's quarterback like I did in Chicago? And sure enough, he trades away Matt Ryan. Well, him and the GM trade away Matt Ryan for a third-round pick only. I feel like that's actually a really bad trade for the Falcons themselves, unless, okay, whatever, maybe they'll draft somebody and they're looking towards the future. They want to rebuild. But, Matt Ryan's not a bad quarterback, and to only get a third-round pick for him when he, this guy's a former MVP winner, yikes. I don't think that was a good move. But other than that, I'd say Tyreek Hill too, only because, the Raiders got better. If the Raiders didn't get Devontae Adams, I'd say, okay, maybe it's not a big deal. But they have one of the best wide receivers now in football, a top 10 wide receiver. And then on top of it, the Broncos got Russell Wilson, so they're not, Teddy Bridgewatered. Now they have a legitimate quarterback over there. No Drew Lock. They have a real quarterback. And the Chargers, hey, they got Khalil Mack, they got Joey Bosa, and Justin Herbert threw for 5,000 yards this year. And they got Mike Williams back too. They never lost him. So I think it's actually a really bad move for the Chiefs. I agree with you in the sense that, now they lose their number one wide receiver. They lost their number 2 or number 3 to the Bears on top of it. They don't have a lot of weapons they're going to be working with come next year. And it's going to be up to really Patrick Mahomes. And that's what you get when you're paying your quarterback $50 million. That's why there's such thing as a salary cap in the NFL. And unfortunately, they couldn't come to an agreement. And now you sit here when you're the Chiefs, and sure, you're paying Patrick Mahomes, who may be the best quarterback in the NFL. But, when you have nothing around him, and, there were times last year where Mahomes was not himself, where Mahomes was not who we saw 2 years ago or a year ago. All I'm saying is, if you don't have enough weapons around you, if you're Mahomes, if you don't have that safety blanket, he's going to be exposed. I'm not saying he's going to be bad or anything this year, but don't expect 2019 or 2020 to happen again when you don't even have Tyreek Hill now.
Yeah, he wasn't old Mahomes when he played against Washington, and we still lost to him. That still gets me mad. But that's another story for another day. I will say 2 things. One, in terms of worst move in NFL offseason, Jaguars signing Christian Kirk, 4 years, $72 million contract.
No,
never had 1,000 receiving yards in the NFL.
If you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you have to pay people like this. Why else would players come to Jacksonville?
I'd rather not have a wide receiver. I'd rather put nobody out than to pay Christian Kirk $20 million a year. I'm not even kidding.
John, you were just talking about how we need to get wide receivers for the Bears to help Fields develop.
Christian Kirk is so overrated. He hasn't even had a 1,000-yard season, and he's being paid.
Who are they paying
17-game season?
Does it even matter? Does it even matter in Jacksonville? Who are they even paying?
I don't know, but you know what? They have $20 million.
Everybody actually this offseason.
That's ridiculous. $20 million to Christian Kirk. This guy's some scrub. He is a scrub. Christian Kirk.
John, it's not all guarantees. It's not all guaranteed, John. It's not all guaranteed. A lot of bonuses too.
His cap hit was $21 million next season.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. That is like literally the biggest waste of money I could think of. And good for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're idiots. They're stupid for that move. They've screwed up with Urban Meyer, obviously. Now they're screwing up with this, and they're going to tank Trevor Lawrence's career because of it. You wait and see. It's ridiculous.
I think Lawrence is going to have a bounce back, though. I don't know. There's just something in me.
Huge failure. That was even worse than Justin Fields, whatever happened down there. Nobody talked about it because they wanted to silence the whole narrative to help out Trevor Lawrence, but I tracked him. He was horrible. I mean, that was awful what happened there last year.
Fair.
Oh, have I told you about my Trevor Lawrence theory? I told you? So Trevor Lawrence, devout Christian, okay? Good for him, by the way.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, he got married after his senior year. So all of that built up testosterone as a very devout Christian, I think there might have been something there, some magic where, he's waiting until marriage and it's all coming out in the football field. And now all of a sudden he gets to the NFL, he's all married, has a big mansion, a big bed, if you know what I mean. And, not putting up the same, not putting in the same work.
When you post this, Nati, just edit me out of that clip.
Okay.
Edit me out.
Okay. I'll try.
No, that's I don't know where
Interesting.
that came from. I don't think that has anything to do with it, to be honest with you there. But to each their own. Maybe it had some sort of role, but I don't think so.
Yeah. I will say though, another this was an under discussed worst move in the offseason. It really, again, wasn't really discussed too much in NFL media circles, but the Patriots got only a 5th round pick back for a 28-year-old, 88 PFF rated top flight right guard that they sent over to the Tampa Bay Bucks in Shaq Mason. Like, I get it. It's a guard. It's not sexy. It's not a receiver. It's not a skill player or anything. But that's a top flight right guard. And remember, this is something that fans are forgetting. The Bucks had Alex Kappa sign with the Cincinnati Bengals and Ali Marpet retire this offseason, right? So they have Tom Brady back, but they were missing guards, and they pretty much only had to trade a 5th round pick for an elite right guard in Shaq Mason from the Patriots. I mean, this just adds to the narrative around how Bill Belichick, he's a great, I think the best head coach of all time, but a terrible GM. A terrible GM.
You know, you have to shake your head sometimes at like the moves they've made over the years. Like, look, I understand. Okay, they win. I know they win, but you know, even think about the Patriots from 10 years ago. Like every year they go through a running back. Even like you know, I don't know. I just don't like some of the models that they employ. And you know, if they win, I guess it doesn't really matter. But like even in this instance, a fifth round pick for a top guard. I mean, that's kind of. I mean, that's a ripoff. And you trade him on top into the Buccaneers. The guy, you know, for Tom Brady left, and you're going to help out Tom Brady. Doesn't really make any sense to me. I don't know, but yeah, I mean that's Bill Belichick. He wins, so you know you can't really criticize him too much. But that one's a head scratcher.
And he talked about the Bears' wide receiving core being trash. I mean, the Patriots' wide receiving core has been
way worse,
stinky. But Paul, you got thoughts on that?
No, you're totally right. Now that I think about it, not quite as glamorous, not quite as big of a trade, but that is pretty huge. And I'm not sure about the Patriots' direction anymore with Mac Jones either. So. I don't even know if they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, but we can't doubt this man's Bill Belichick as a head coach. It's just I don't know. It's a weird dynamic, right? Like I feel like they might need to strip him of his general manager duties sooner rather than later. But then again, you might piss him off, right? And he might no longer be the coach in New England. So I don't know. It's kind of a hard dilemma that the Patriots are currently trying to deal with. But the next question that I want to ask you guys is, who do you think the Bears should target in next month's NFL draft? And maybe you guys have some ideas on who Washington should target as well, because you know we're in similar situations.
I mean, I'll go first. I think the Bears and Washington both could use a good wide receiver. That would be nice for both teams, and it'd be a mutual benefit for both teams. As I said earlier, the Bears need some help, and you know, Chris Olave heard his name a lot. Well, you know, hey, him and Justin Fields have that connection from Ohio State. Could be like a Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow type thing. I think that'd be a guy to really target if you're the Bears, or at least one of the other wide receivers out there. The kid from Purdue, I forgot his name. He's really good as well. So there are a couple of options for the Bears the second round. They could even move up if they wanted to into the first round and trade one of their second round picks. They have a lot of ways to get around it, but they need a wide receiver. And Washington does too. I think both teams could benefit from an elite wide receiver in this draft. And for the Bears, of course, offensive line help. I mean, you know, who doesn't need that? But the Bears certainly need it. They don't even have enough offensive linemen to field a team right now, technically on their roster. So I would hope they're going to build a little bit in the draft here and draft somebody preferably in that second round with that other second round pick if they could.
Yeah, I agree with you, John. My original thought was you need offensive linemen. That's what you need before the wide receiver. You've convinced me a little bit, and in part because I think this next season is a wash for the Bears, like in many different ways. So if you can get a better pick in the next draft and potentially get, you know, one of those, maybe not generational is the wrong word, but just like a stable offensive lineman who will be there for a decade, that would be worth it. But where we are in the second round right now, we're not going to get that guy. But I still think we need offensive line help regardless.
Man, it feels like every year the Bears don't have a first round pick. It's kind of, I mean, I think last year they might have, or they traded back, if I'm not mistaken. Like, what was?
They got Justin Fields, but then
they
got rid of this year's first round pick.
Yeah. And then they had the Khalil Mack trade that they had to, But I mean, I agree with you. Both of our teams could actually need a receiver, even though we have Terry McLaurin, right? Who's, I don't know how long he's going to be here because with wide receiving contracts going up, I don't know, man. He might want out of this situation. Who knows? I hope not. But yeah, I definitely agree, wide receiver. But in terms of like specific guys, I like Jameson Williams still. I know he suffered the torn ACL in the national championship game in January, but I heard that his timetable is only 5 to 7 months from January. So that should put him, potentially being ready by the start of the preseason, if not the regular season. I know that sounds really soon for a torn ACL, but like that's what I've heard from NFL.com reports and stuff. But if not, Jameson Williams, who I think is the clear-cut number one receiver when fully healthy, could also go after the two Ohio State guys, right? Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, USC guy, Drake London as well. All great wide receiving targets. And I also think maybe a Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley at cornerback might be helpful as well, because I think for both teams too, because both of our secondaries aren't that great. But yeah, I think wide receivers are probably the group that both of our teams must target immediately. I do want to get your guys' thoughts, though, on Loyola Chicago, because usually they make some noise in the tournament, but I believe they bowed out after their first or second game this year, and I'm a huge fan of them. One, because obviously the Chicago connection, but also because of Sister Jean. What are your thoughts on Loyola Chicago bowing out the tournament and the overall March Madness festivities thus far?
So before we talk about March Madness, can I give a quick shout out to Kyle Hamilton, by the way, who is not getting talked about in the media, but is going to be an instant star in the NFL at a position where I feel like we've had a lot of, loud and proud safeties in the NFL that are going to, talk a lot of trash and be big in the media. And I think he wherever he goes, I think the Jets are like top 3 might pick him. I mean, he's going to be an instant star in my opinion, and nobody's talking about it. I think because this draft is not very quarterback heavy, but I think Kyle Hamilton is a big deal. And that's not just because I'm biased toward Notre Dame.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it would be crazy for the Jets to go after Kyle Hamilton after just trading away Jamal Adams. But I mean, I could see that.
It makes sense.
Yeah. But thoughts on March Madness, guys?
I'll go. I think part of it is actually just a lack of experience in the coach, not necessarily the team, the coach. This is the first year of Denzel Valentine's brother, coach of the team.
Denzel Valentine's brother.
Have Denzel Valentine, by the way. But anyway, he's a good coach. Hey, he was an assistant for years. I understand it. But when you're on the big stage and you're not leaning on Porter Moser anymore, great coach. I love Porter Moser. When you have to do it yourself and you can't be the second in command and the bright lights are on you, and this is your first March Madness as the head coach, understandably, it may not go as it did with Porter Moser, who had years of experience with it. I mean, I feel like Loyola Chicago is going to be back in the thick of it next year, no matter what. I think it was just a matter of inexperience at the head coaching position, which is understandable. I feel like he should have been given a little bit more slack. I think the expectations were really high in Valentine, when the fact is, hey, this is a whole new head coach, and Porter Moser is a generational type coach. Maybe he's not given a lot of the press coverage because he's not Duke's head coach, but he was a great coach for a number of years at Loyola, and rightfully so got a promotion to a different school. You bring in a brand new coach now in Valentine, even if he's familiar with the players in the program, it's much different when you're the head coach of a well-known school that should be doing well in the tournament in this situation in your first year. So I feel like, next year things will probably be a bit better for them once he gets this experience under his belt. This is valuable to lose like this in your first year as head coach. You come back next year, you're familiar more with the program, and you'll probably make some more noise in March.
And I don't think the expectations were too high for them this year, because they had some pretty bad losses in the regular season. So I personally wasn't expecting it. I think part of the charm of Loyola was the underdog status, and they had kind of all eyes on them, new head coach, and sort of underperformed in the regular season. I didn't see a whole lot of potential for March Madness to begin with. So,
okay, fair enough. Second to last question, because I know we're gonna get to some maybe heated discussion. We'll see last, but can the Bulls still win the East? Quick answers on that.
Nope, no chance.
Unfortunately, nope. And I'm rocking the Bulls today, and I can confidently say no. And
are they still contenders?
No, but I think they're okay. So here's why they can't win the East. We are a terrible matchup for a lot of the best teams in the East. In particular, the 76ers, we just cannot beat. We just cannot play defense. I love Vooch, but he cannot play defense. It's a terrible matchup with Joel Embiid. And then the other team that destroys us is the Miami Heat, because they play hard and they play defense, and Jimmy Butler always comes out, motivates his team to beat Chicago. Now, what I do think is interesting is the 4-5 matchup between the Bucks and the Bulls. And I understand the Bucks have kind of owned the Bulls this season, but I think that is potentially winnable for the Bulls when fully healthy and fully motivated to knock Grayson Allen out of the playoffs. I think that is a series to watch. But the fact that we've slipped down to the 5 seed, a game out of the 6 seed, is just atrocious for our, going forward in the playoffs. I mean, it's just totally unlikely.
The Cavs are the 6th.
The Bulls are the biggest tease in the NBA. and hear me out on this, that they started out as the number 1 seed. Everybody was talking them up. And then if you criticize them for anything, you were shot down immediately. Well, now all their problems are coming to light. And I never was even a big critic of the Bulls. I was happy that they were actually improving. And let's remember that, by the way. Remember that no matter what, hey, this is a big improvement for the Bulls no matter what happens this year. Even if they get knocked out round 1 or if they somehow slip to the play-in game, which would be a travesty, still, it's better than last year. So I want to preface all this by saying this is an improvement. But you know what?
But they also spent a lot of money, though. So I think they're expecting to be better than a play-in seed.
And that's where I was going. You read my mind. You know what?
Yep.
You pay money to get DeMar DeRozan. You pay money to get Alex Caruso. You pay money to get Lonzo Ball. And okay, yes, there were injuries. But everybody has injuries. You can't be going, whatever the number is now, like 0-15 against the top 3 seeds in each conference or whatever. You can't be doing that. So then if the question is, hey, are they going to be a contender? Hell no, because they can't even beat the teams that are top 3. And they were one of those top 3 teams at some point. Yet when the time came for them to start winning and start beating these good teams, they never came through, and they still haven't come through to this day. And Paul, I love you, but I have to disagree on that. I don't think the Bulls would do anything, even in a playoff series against the Bucks. The Bucks have owned them. They've completely owned them, and it's so underwhelming. Even the Grayson Allen BS. You know what? At the end of the day, the Bulls have done nothing to even counteract that. What happened to toughness in the NBA? I mean, when we all watched The Last Dance, right, during the beginning of the quarantine. Look at how different the NBA was then versus now. There is no toughness. There is no, physicality or anger. There's nothing. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this quote the other day of Draymond Green. Oh, yeah, I'm going to skip the game for the Warriors, and I'm going to go watch LeBron break the record. What the hell are we doing here?
That made me so mad. That made me so upset.
Come on.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And to your point, John, about how we spent money, the issue definitely has not been the roster.
Yeah.
It's been underperforming, like both injuries, but then Vooch also underperforming at times, even Lonzo underperforming at times, and now Zach's knee is a problem. So there are a lot of question marks, and I think the bigger concern is what's going on with Zach's knee, and can we re-sign him next year for potentially less than a max deal?
Which would be worth it if it's no matter what, less than a max deal.
Oh, yeah.
100% worth it. But, even if you get to that max deal, here's the thing you have to ask yourself if you're the Bulls. I'm not opposed to paying Zach LaVine money, but you have to assess where the organization is. Okay, this team going to be around for much longer? And you got to remember, Vucevic is going to be around, I think, for only 1 more year after this one. So you have to really assess, okay, is this roster that we have right now built to win in 5 years? I don't know, because a lot of these guys are on the tail end of their contracts already, even DeMar DeRozan to an extent. Are you going to be willing to win in 5 years with this same team or with a similar team? You don't know that. So I don't know if it's going to be worth paying Zach LaVine for a 5-year, 6-year, long-term deal when you don't know where your team's going to be in 5 years, because this team was built to win today. This team was built to win today, next year, maybe 1 more year after that. But past 3 years, I don't know where they're going to be going, to be honest. I have no clue.
Although we do have a deep team, and I'm surprised because I'm a big Kobe White fan, but he is not getting any minutes just because of the roster we have right now. So I'm surprised we didn't try to move him at the deadline, because he deserves to play. Last year, there was stretches where he was dropping 20 a night just because he was starting and he was like shooting threes. And even portions of this year when we had injuries, he's driving to the basket. So I still think we have pieces to potentially come through with like some sort of trade next year. Maybe even a sign and trade with Zach to like get, another star piece. But yeah, there really is a lot of soul searching with the organization. Can we compete again next year? Do you think we could actually hold the number 1 seed for, past the All-Star game?
I will say this. I think my Cavs have a brighter future. But with that being said, let's get to the last topic. LeBron Ramon James Sr. Okay, Abdullah made the first comment. And let me preface this conversation, however long it may last, by saying there's 2 content creators on this channel that are true LeBron stans. They think he's the GOAT. They thought he's been the GOAT for years now. I'm sort of the more moderate guy. I think MJ's still the GOAT. I think LeBron has a chance of overtaking him, but he has to maybe win another championship or 2, maybe win 1 more MVP. That's my thinking right now, right? But I want to get your guys' thoughts on where LeBron ranks all time. Give me his placement on your all-time list, and also if you think he ever has a shot of being number 1 over MJ.
He's easily number 2, but has no shot of being number 1. I think it's too late in his career, and I don't think he has much prospects. Even if he won another championship, like through some miraculous, reshaping of the Lakers next year, I still don't think that would be enough to take over MJ, given some of his, poorer recent years. And you could talk to me all you want about the numbers, but these recent years have been, not what we've seen from dominant Miami Heat LeBron. And I think also the finals losses are a little rough. And you cannot tell me that he went to so many straight finals in that Eastern Conference with nobody. Okay, you cannot tell me. Because if he were in the Western Conference,
he also had nobody's on his team, like in 2018, where he led arguably the worst finals team of all time. He also led arguably the worst finals team of all time in 2006 when he was only, 21 years old. He's pretty much our age doing that kind of stuff.
It don't mean a thing without the ring. Keep going, Paul.
But man, I do have respect. That was the last year I think that was the last year we really saw LeBron in his peak. Especially that I think it was the 2018 playoff run where it was basically just him like rampaging through game sevens. I think he played a game 7 in the first round versus the Pacers that year. Just for perspective, if he had, he didn't lose, thank God, but almost lost to the Pacers first round. The Celtics with a young team almost overtook him. So I will say that 2018 LeBron year was special, even though he didn't win. And you're going to tell me he won a championship with Anthony Davis fully healthy. The same Anthony Davis that everybody loves to say is a top 5 NBA player when healthy, even though he's never healthy.
Everybody. Mm-hmm.
Everybody used to say that until this year, until they realized, oh, shoot, I've seen this guy play for like 3 months in the past 5 years. And now, here, let me tell you something. LeBron James today is not a top 5 NBA player. And I understand that he is currently the points leader. And forget the fact that all these years, the LeBron stands will tell you, oh, points don't matter. LeBron passes the ball. Oh, it doesn't matter that KD scores more. It doesn't matter that so-and scored. James Harden scores more. It's all about team play. LeBron is now realizing if he passes the ball, it doesn't matter. They're still going to lose. So LeBron's strategy has just been, I'm just going to score myself. If you look at his stats over his recent games, it's like 2 assists, 3 assists, which is not what we're used to seeing from LeBron. And I think prime LeBron was when he learned to pass the ball. When he learned to not only put up like almost, the high 20s a night, but also get like 8 or 9 assists, get everyone in the team involved and win championships. So I think the fact that we're seeing LeBron score more is actually a sign that things are on, a downward turn for him.
Okay. No, LeBron will never take over Michael Jordan's spot. And even on the all-time list, to be honest, and Nazi's going to hate me, and all these LeBron stans who are watching the channel are going to hate me.
Don't group me with the LeBron stans right now.
I don't know if he's even going to be.
I thought I was, John. I thought we in our conversations in our Chicago apartment that I was a true LeBron stan, but I met some LeBron stans, bro. It's a whole different dynamic. It's a whole different dynamic. But go ahead.
I don't think he's even number 2 all time, maybe 3 or 4. But see, here's the way I judge all time. Okay, are you reliable enough to win in the NBA Finals? And I could think of some other people who are more reliable than LeBron James at winning when it matters most. I'm not saying that necessarily they're better per se, but you have to put them in the conversation. Bill Russell should be in the conversation. The guy's 11 rings, right? Who am I going to trust more, LeBron James or Bill Russell to win a title? I'd actually trust Bill Russell more, no matter what. I mean, he has 11 rings. That's just, you can't even argue with that versus 4 and 6 in the finals. That's even worse. Oh my gosh.
Do you know who Bill Russell was playing against, John?
He's not even in the finals.
Do you know who Bill Russell was playing against, John?
I understand.
Do you really?
Okay. He's still a winner. Still a winner. I'm not saying
I know.
I'm saying he's in the conversation. You have to put him in the conversation. Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, they have to be considered in the conversation as well, I think. They should be somewhere in that area with LeBron James when it comes to 2, 3, 4. I don't even know what order to put them in, to be honest, but they have to be somewhere lumped together with Michael Jordan at number 1 on his own no matter what. Michael Jordan was 6-0 in the finals. I mean, that's pretty much self-explanatory. LeBron lost too many times in the finals for me to ever think he'd be at the top, or if he would ever overtake Michael Jordan. Even if he won the finals again, it wouldn't matter. Even if he won miraculously with this, I was about to swear, with this crappy team, it wouldn't make a difference. So you got me. I'm not on FCC regulations right now. I almost let one loose. But anyway, so with this crappy team, even if he won, I don't think he'd be up there next to Michael. The fact is, he lost way too many times. And as I said earlier, to Paul's point, which is true, I don't care if he made it ever so many times. It don't mean a thing without the ring. And that's a bold saying, but it's so true. That's why nobody cares about the Warriors going 73-9, because you know what? It don't mean a thing without the ring. The Bulls went 72-10 and won. They had to win for it to really, really mean something, and they didn't. And the same with LeBron. You cannot be going 4-6. You cannot have an under 500 record in the finals, then turn around and say, yeah, he's the greatest of all time. How is that even possible? Look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the GOAT, right? Everybody says he's the GOAT. He wins. He doesn't lose all the time. LeBron statistically and truthfully loses more than he wins in the biggest stage of the NBA. That automatically makes sure that you are not number one and you will never be number one.
All right, here's one thing I want to say to the Bill Russell point, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We can say, okay, well, Bill Russell wasn't playing against anyone. But keep in mind, that's what a lot of people say about Michael Jordan, too. And I just want to remind people, people always say that LeBron's competition these days, that's one of the big arguments, is that LeBron these days. So I'll just remind everyone that Michael Jordan is playing against some of the most legendary teams that we remember, okay? And who was LeBron James's biggest rival in the Eastern Conference? Lance Stevenson. That was his rivalry.
Whoa.
It was Lance Stevenson
What about the Celtics?
messing with him.
The Celtics?
Lance Stevenson, an aging Celtics, and get this, DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry.
Warriors.
That's who he's playing as. Are we going to remember DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry as some of the? I mean, I love those two players. They had some great teams. Are we going to remember them as some of the NBA's best? And LeBron just stomped over them for 5 years straight.
The Warriors for 4 years. Are we going to forget that? I mean, they had arguably.
I mean, did he beat them 4 years? So he beat them 4 years? Is that what you're saying?
You would have beat them at least 2 if he had a healthy Kyrie or Kevin.
If it's in butts, yeah.
He had Matthew Dellavedova as his second best player in 2014. We're gonna.
Didn't happen.
I'm not disagreeing with you guys on the MJ's the GOAT take. I'm just saying I'm disagreeing on individual points that you guys are using to confirm your belief that MJ is the GOAT. So a couple things.
LeBron stands here. You are.
No, I'm not.
John,
I am not.
Listen,
if I was a LeBron stan, I would be, a Shannon Sharp up on you, or I'd be a Nick Wright who would say, he's undebatably the number one guy. I mean, Nick Wright said he was the GOAT before he won his 2016 championship, or right after, something like that. Okay, let me get to my points to push back against both Paul and John. So first off, Paul, you said 2018 LeBron was the last time we saw prime LeBron. 2020 LeBron, we saw, one of his greatest playoff stretches that he's ever had. I mean, I get it. Oh, he was in the bubble. Everybody had to deal with the bubble. Like, every single team had to deal with the bubble. LeBron had to deal with the bubble, plus the fact that he had a team that going into the season, everybody was expecting to win a championship. So he had championship expectations. He had the bubble conditions to deal with. He won a championship. Why are we just pushing that under the rug? Like that's an accomplishment. I don't care about people who say that's a Mickey Mouse ring. That's a poor
It is an accomplishment. It is.
No,
but I still think it's more impressive. 2018 was more impressive. 2018 to me was more impressive.
I agree with you, Paul. But that also gets to the point that winning a championship is not everything. Like that also pushes back against Sean's point, the fact that you said 2018 was a better run by LeBron than 2020, right?
But that was because of the run, though. And I'm also taking into account that a lot of players have come out and talked about how unmotivated they were in the bubble, okay? And we're talking about a healthy Anthony Davis who finally, this is perfect conditions. If LeBron could pause the season for 3 months and get Anthony Davis healthy, he would do it in a heartbeat. He was probably so excited to be in the bubble. He couldn't wait to get there to Disney World.
What?
And that's not to say it doesn't count as a ring, and it does. But what I'm saying is I still think that peak LeBron was 2018 with the Cavs.
Well, okay. A couple things there. One, I've been saying this since Anthony Davis was acquired by the Lakers, but I think Anthony Davis is the first time LeBron has ever had a Scottie Pippen. And when I say Scottie Pippen, I mean all around MVP type player, right? Without him, right? Like that was the Scottie Pippen when MJ retired, right? And Scottie was doing some great things with the Bulls. And I think Anthony Davis, a healthy Anthony Davis, gives you that type of production.
Wait, did you say Scottie Pippen was MVP caliber player without LeBron? Without MJ?
Wasn't he viewed as one of the best players in the NBA without MJ?
He was up there, but not MVP. Not like serious MVP like Anthony Davis, Defensive Player of the Year.
But Scottie Pippen was one of the best defenders of all time as well.
Okay, well, I would say that Anthony Davis, when healthy, I think what you're saying is that he's one of the better LeBron's best teammate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I'm saying that it's the first time that LeBron has ever had a Scottie Pippen in the sense that he's a great defender, great offensive player, and even without him, he stands alone as a great player in the NBA. That's what I am saying. He did not have that with Kyrie. Don't tell me Kyrie on the Cavs was a Scottie Pippen. He was not. He was never MVP type.
D-Wade?
He doesn't need a Scottie Pippen. He had Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. Are you kidding me?
An aging Dwayne Wade? Paul wants to say aging Celtics team. I'm using Paul's sports against him. He wants to say an aging Celtics team. He had an aging D-Wade, right? He was great.
D-Wade went on to play for like many years after LeBron. He even came to join LeBron in Cleveland for a bit in 2018. It's not so. Oh man, come on, aging D-Wade. He played for like 3 or 4 years after LeBron left.
Oh, that's not.
Okay, he played is a different thing than he starred in his 2 or 3 years that he had left.
He came to the Bulls and almost had us a playoff.
You guys are disregarding my point. What I'm saying is that LeBron James, for the first time in his career, had a true Scottie Pippen type player when the Lakers acquired Anthony Davis. You know what the difference is, though, between an Anthony Davis on the Lakers and a Scottie Pippen on the Bulls? The difference, other than MJ LeBron, is that the Lakers did not have Anthony Davis to rely on every single game. This man is made out of glass. Made out of glass. They traded away so many assets for him, and look where they're at right now. The next point I want to get to, you guys didn't even let me get to my other points. Second point, LeBron is not a top 5 player right now. You're going to probably put KD above him, right? How about KD right now with Kyrie, and better Kyrie than he was on the Nets? I don't know if you guys think otherwise, but how about the Nets right now? Aren't they like 8th in the East? And I get it. KD has been injured. Kyrie has been in and out. He was also in and out on the Cavs. KD, last time I checked, since he's been healthy, have the Nets moved much in the standings? Have they moved to be a top 4, top 5 team in the East like a lot of people expected out of them? Or are they still in the 8th to 9th to 10th place mark that they were before KD went down with an injury?
I agree with you. And you know what? You know why that is? Because KD and everybody in the NBA is softer than they were 10 years ago. KD has been so dependent. Everybody is so dependent. Now everybody needs somebody else. They can't just do it on their own anymore because everybody is such a baby. Because everybody for years, it's always about the team. Who am I going to team up with? You know, Kevin Durant is supposed to be, or at least I remember Kevin Durant from the Thunder. He's supposed to be great. There should be nothing getting in his way. That just goes to show you the problem with the NBA. All these guys are babies now. Like, really? What? Oh, I can't win now because I don't have Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. Figure it out. You won before. Why can't you win now? Just goes to show you that it's such a scam. They're all babies.
And John, I understand, right? You take out the MJ conversation, but if you look at LeBron, right, 2018, 2006, 2007 season, he still found a way to at least get to the championship, which Kevin Durant has never done. I mean, he did with a young Thunder team. I'll give him that. But since then,
I agree.
He hasn't done except on the Warriors.
I'm saying right now, right now, though. I don't mean like there are 5 better players than him all time right now. Obviously not. I'm saying right this second. I think Giannis and Joel Embiid are the 2 easy picks over LeBron right now. Okay? I don't think there's much debating those 2.
Yeah.
Okay?
I
think you could make an argument for Kevin Durant, although what you're saying is fair, that they should have a better record right now, although so should the Lakers, to be fair.
Okay.
And then I would also take Jokic, who is, by the way, I think probably the MVP favorite right now, and winning on a team without his 2 other like star players. So talk about winning on a team with nobody else. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing in a stacked Western Conference. So at least those 4 players right now are playing better than LeBron.
Let me ask you guys this question. This is what I've asked people who, put LeBron outside their top 5 right now. If you put LeBron James on the Nuggets team right now, you're telling me they wouldn't be at the same mark that they're at right now
Nope.
with a Jokic?
Nope. I don't think
know.
so.
I don't know. If all things are equal, if you put LeBron James on the same caliber team as, I don't know, the 76ers or the Bucks or the Nuggets, I'm sorry, you might disagree with me, but I think those teams would probably not have much of a drop off. I'm just saying. Like, you got an NBA points per game leader right now.
I think especially the Sixers would have a huge drop off.
Yeah.
The way Joel Embiid has been absolutely carrying that team. People forget before James Harden, they were in like shambles. I thought their roster was kind of in shambles. To be fair, they have had some role players stepping up, but it's really been Joel Embiid putting the team on their back, right? And I think Giannis is a force unlike anything else. Like I know you could say, well, LeBron is also a force unlike anything else, but can LeBron, take 3 steps, walk past everybody, and just dunk on your tallest defender? Not at his age right now. So,
but he also could pass much better at his age right now. He could also, he could will
Giannis
a team
can pass.
to
Giannis
win.
has gotten better at passing too.
There's levels to this, Paul. There's levels to passing, and I think LeBron is at a level that Giannis will never reach in terms of passing. But John, you have thoughts on? Okay, I will say this. I get John's point about LeBron potentially be three or 4 all time. I just think you have to put him on your Mount Rushmore. I just think it would be stupid for people who, view themselves as NBA experts, NBA analysts to not put LeBron James right now on at least their Mount Rushmore all time, just with everything that he's done. And also, especially after the fact that he's likely going to be the NBA points leader of all time after next season, right? Age 38. So I agree with you there. The LeBron is not a top 5 player right now. And I don't know. That's kind of hard to.
Here's my opinion. LeBron, I think, is easily number 2 all time, right?
Okay.
And I think he's probably the only player you could even talk about in a conversation with Michael Jordan. I mean, I don't believe you could talk about him, but he's the only player that people do talk about with LeBron, with MJ. And I think part of the issue is we're past LeBron's peak. And I think it's time to start being nostalgic for like Miami LeBron, because I still think those were like the glory years. And like, that's something that people will look back on and say, where were you when LeBron and D Wade were tearing it up down there in South Beach, right? Kind of like how people say, where were you when the Bulls were, winning 6 straight championships, MJ. So I think that's what people will look back upon. So I think people get too caught up right now on LeBron and what he's, his longevity, obviously important. People get too caught up on that, him being the points leader and all this stuff. I think we should be looking a little bit more to the past in that regard.
Okay. Although I would say that 2016 LeBron, at least 2016 playoffs, LeBron was probably the best we've ever seen out of him. Like, at least in terms of the finals, coming back down from 3-1 to win the championship against the 73-9 Warriors team that ultimately soft fill in the blank KD jumped on board and, just ruined the NBA for the next several years after that. But I would say that's probably the best LeBron we've seen, but maybe even 2018. But I'm not totally disagreeing with a lot of the points you guys mentioned outside of LeBron not being able to pass Jordan. I think at least he'll be able to get to a point where it's 1A, 1B, Jordan, LeBron. And that's, again, if he wins another championship, or maybe 2, if he wins another MVP, I think you would have a more legit conversation then. But I think the last thing, to just end this off, because I don't want to take too much more of your guys' time, the last thing I'll say is I think we can agree that LeBron's not the GOAT right now. And for Abdullah and Noah, who are watching this or watching the replay, that's where we are. And that's where I said this before, and I'll say this again. About 70% of Americans also agree with us right now. And then MJ is the GOAT. So, you guys are in the minority. That's all I'm going to say. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. There were comments throughout this. I'm sorry, guys, that we couldn't get to everything. I saw the Chris Olave comment. Both the Ohio State receivers are really good for both the Bears and Washington to potentially draft next month. But thank you guys so much for watching. Paul and John, is there anything else you want to say before we officially sign off?
You can go ahead.
I was going to say thanks for having me again. It's always fun. Go Bulls. Even though there's no shot, I will still get extremely pissed every time, Vuce misses a three. So at the very least, it'll be fun to watch some exciting playoff basketball, something I'm sure the DMV area is, hopefully the next few years will have as well.
Thank you for this roommate reunion. That's what you should name this. Go back and name this the roommate reunion. But no, this was super fun. It was great to see you guys doing. Hey, Nati, congrats on graduating too, brother.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you too.
Thanks,
you too.
man. Yeah.
Can't forget that. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to go and sub John up on all his channels, YouTube. I mean, again, fastest growing sports YouTuber right now, arguably, and on his Twitter as well. I think he linked that in his name. Instagram page. Just go sub him up. Overall, good guy, good creator, good analyst. Will give you great insight. Of course, would give you great insight on the Chicago sports scene, but also on the national sports scene as well. So, and Paul as well, good friend. He's been on the channel several times before, always provides great insight. And I hope you're doing well right now at Penn, Paul. Hope things are not too stressful. But that's how we're going to end it off, guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Everybody who joined in the chat, Hawk TV, Door Gunner, Piper Roll DC, our good friend James from college as well, and Abdullah. Man, the GOAT needs some respect. See you guys on the next one, and have a great rest of your night. Peace.